chill stories to fall asleep to. My brother vanished by the 237th rule, part 1. The night Andrew called from every floor. The first time Andrew called my name from inside the walls, I was standing in the cafeteria of an abandoned psychiatric hospital with my hands over my ears, trying not to answer him. That is the part I still have trouble explaining. Not the hospital, not the trespassing, not even the fact that Andrew had vanished from his sleeping bag sometime after midnight with his flashlight still lying beside it. I mean, the answering. Because everyone thinks they know what they would do if someone they loved called for help. You answer. You run toward them. You tear doors off hinges if you have to. That is what decent people do. But by then I had learned just enough to understand that Blackwood State Hospital did not care about decency. It did not care about courage, loyalty, friendship, guilt, or love. It only cared whether a voice was heard, whether a voice was answered, and how many times the same name could be repeated before someone broke. Andrew called from the 3rd floor first, then from the basement, then from somewhere above the roof where there should have been only night sky, then from directly behind me, close enough that I felt the warmth of his breath on the back of my neck. "Randy," he whispered. "Don't let them count you." I turned around. There was nobody there. Just overturned cafeteria tables, broken windows, our scattered gear, and Andrew's empty sleeping bag lying in the circle where he should have been. That was Halloween night. But I suppose the story really began earlier that afternoon, when I received the best news of my life and felt nothing at all. I was sitting at my desk at home with my MIT acceptance letter open in front of me. Aerospace engineering. Full ride. The thing I had wanted since I was 12 years old, maybe younger. My mother used to tell people I was the kind of kid who took apart toy airplanes to see how the wings worked, then cried because I could not put them back together perfectly. I should have called her first. I should have run downstairs, shoved the laptop in my parents' faces, and watched them cry. Instead, I sat there with a letter on one half of my screen and a search page on the other. Unexplained disappearances, abandoned psychiatric hospitals. That was what I typed. I remember staring at the words after I hit enter and feeling ashamed, like I had caught myself doing something dirty. The obsession had started 18 months earlier, after a Halloween trip to Riverside State. I have tried to tell myself that nothing happened there. Not really. We explored an abandoned ward, took pictures, found patient files that had been left behind, scared ourselves stupid, and left before sunrise. That was the official version. The one I told my parents. The one I told Trevor, Lexi, Barry, and Andrew when they asked why I went quiet on the drive home. The real version was this. At Riverside, while the others were outside smoking near the old ambulance bay, I heard my mother singing from inside a locked treatment room. Not a recording, not a memory. Her voice. She was singing the song she used to hum when I had night terrors as a kid. The one about ships finding their way home by counting stars. I had not heard it in years. I stood outside that locked room with my flashlight shaking in my hand, listening to my mother's voice hum from a place she had never been. Then, the humming stopped, and a child's voice on the other side of the door whispered, "He'll come back when he knows the number." I never told anyone that. After Riverside, abandoned hospitals stopped feeling like places and started feeling like unfinished sentences. I spent months reading about missing urban explorers, old asylums, sealed wards, fires in state hospitals, experimental patient programs, people who walked into dead buildings with friends and somehow never walked out. My parents thought I was going through a phase. Randy has always been interested in architecture. My mother told my aunt one Sunday when she saw the hospital books on my desk, "He likes old buildings." She was smiling when she said it, but I remember her face changing when my aunt mentioned Blackwood, just the name. Blackwood State. My mother dropped the mug she was holding. It did not shatter. It only bounced once on the kitchen rug and rolled under the table. But she stared at it like something had crawled out of it. "Where did you hear that name?" she asked. My aunt laughed, confused. "I don't know. One of those places boys like to break into, probably." My mother turned to me. I had never seen her look at me that way before. Not angry exactly. Not scared exactly. More like I had walked into the kitchen wearing a dead person's clothes. "Don't go there," she said. I tried to joke it off. "Mom, I don't even know where it is." She stepped closer. "I mean it, Randy. Do not go to Blackwood." That should have been enough. Of course it was not. A month later, Trevor found it. Our group had been doing Halloween explorations since sophomore year. It started as stupid teenage bravado. Old factories, closed schools, a burned-out hotel once, places where the danger was mostly rotten floors, exposed nails, and cops with flashlights. Trevor loved the history. He could spend 2 weeks researching a place before we ever set foot inside it. Lexi brought cameras and common sense. Barry brought bad jokes and bolt cutters. He pretended he never used. Andrew brought the calm. That was the best way to describe him. Andrew always knew where to park, where to enter, which hallway was unsafe, which stairs not to trust. He never raised his voice, never panicked, never let the rest of us panic either. He was my best friend, though I do not know if that word is big enough now. He helped me with college applications. He read every version of my MIT essay. He once drove 40 minutes at 2 in the morning because I texted him that I could not sleep after Riverside. I thought I knew him better than anyone. I was wrong. Trevor announced Blackwood on a Thursday night at Barry's house. He spread printed records across the kitchen table like he was presenting evidence at a trial. Built in 1897, he said. Closed in 1986 after a state investigation. Officially abandoned. 7 stories, mostly intact. Gothic institutional design. Tons of patient history. Barry leaned over a photo of the building. "That place looks like it eats people." Trevor grinned. "Funny you should say that." Lexi gave him a look. "No." "Oh, come on, you have to hear this." Andrew stood by the counter, arms crossed, watching the photo instead of Trevor. I remember that now. At the time, I thought he was just studying the building layout, but there was something else in his face. Recognition, maybe. Trevor pulled out a photocopied patient summary. "Patient 237, he said. Real name David Henley. Admitted in 1973. Diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, violent episodes, auditory hallucinations, all the usual horror movie stuff. But then his treatment notes get weird." "How weird?" I asked. Trevor tapped the page. "Doctor said he stopped speaking out loud near the end, but other patients, through vents. Sometimes from rooms he wasn't in." Barry laughed. "So, ghost ventriloquist?" "Not exactly. Staff started doing things they couldn't remember. Unlocking doors, standing in supply closets, walking into restricted wards in the middle of the night. One nurse claimed Henley had been calling her using her dead father's voice. Nobody laughed after that." Trevor continued. "The psychiatrist in charge was Dr. Elizabeth Cray. She wrote a paper that never got published. Something about grief response, acoustic imprinting, and repeated trauma in closed spaces. That phrase stayed with me. Acoustic imprinting. I did not know why yet. Then Trevor showed us one more scan. It was barely readable. Just a corner of a page from some old report. At the bottom, someone had written by hand, "Do not answer after the count begins." Below that was a number, 237. I looked at Andrew then. He was staring at that page with the color gone from his face. "You okay?" I asked. He blinked like he had forgotten we were all there. "Yeah," he said. "I'm fine." But he did not sound fine. We drove to Blackwood on Halloween morning. 2 hours north, past small towns with empty storefronts and church signs missing letters. The sky stayed gray the whole way, low and heavy, like weather that had changed its mind halfway through becoming rain. Andrew drove. Barry sat up front. Trevor and Lexi argued about camera batteries in the back. I sat by the window, watching trees slide past, trying not to think about my mother's face when she said the name Blackwood. At one point, my phone buzzed. "Mom." I let it ring. Then it buzzed again. A text. Call me before tonight, please. I stared at it until the screen went dark. Andrew glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Everything good? Yeah, I lied. College stuff. He nodded, but his eyes stayed on me for a second, too long. The hospital appeared through the trees just after 3 in the afternoon. 7 stories of red brick, broken glass, and black windows. Gothic towers rose above the main roof like watchmen. Dead vines crawled up the walls. The whole place looked less abandoned than patient, like it had been waiting quietly for years and had finally heard our car. Nobody spoke for a while. Then Barry said, "Well, that's welcoming." Trevor lifted his camera. Andrew parked a quarter-mile away near an old service road, exactly where he said he would. He had found a gap in the north fence from satellite images. We carried our packs through wet leaves and dead weeds until the hospital swallowed the sky above us. The fence was peeled back at the bottom. Andrew went first. Then Barry. Then Trevor and Lexi. I went last. The second I crawled through, I had the sudden childish thought that the fence had not been broken to let people in. It had been bent open to let something out. We entered through a basement window with no glass left in the frame. Andrew dropped down first and called up that it was clear. One by one, we passed the gear and climbed inside. The basement smelled like rust, dust, and something metallic beneath both, like old pennies held under the tongue. Our flashlights moved over concrete walls, storage rooms, peeling green linoleum, and doors swollen from water damage. The first thing I noticed was the sound, or the lack of it. Barry dropped his flashlight maybe 5 minutes in. It hit the floor with a dull little knock and stopped. No echo, no clatter down the hall, just a dead sound absorbed instantly. Trevor noticed too. Weird acoustics, he said. Andrew did not answer. He was staring down the corridor, listening. We explored until dusk. First floor patient rooms, a nursing station with thick safety glass, a hydrotherapy room with rusted tubs, a therapy circle where the chairs were still arranged as if the patients had only stepped out. Everywhere the sound was wrong. Our voices did not travel. Footsteps ended too quickly. Doors shut without echo. The building accepted every noise we made and kept it. By sunset, Andrew chose the second-floor cafeteria as our base. It had wide windows, 2 exits, and enough open space to see anything coming. Strategic. That was what he always called it. We laid our sleeping bags in a circle near the windows. Andrew's bag was to my left. Trevor set up his camera. Barry unpacked food. Lexi photographed graffiti on the walls. I checked my phone. No service. But one new message had come through from my mother before the signal died. "Randy, listen to me. If you hear someone you love in that place, do not answer." I read it 3 times. Then, Andrew spoke from beside me. "You ever feel like a place knows your name before you tell it?" I looked up. His face was half shadowed by the dying light. "What?" He shook his head. "Nothing. That night I woke at 2:37. Not 2:36. Not 2:38. 2:37. I know because I checked my watch before I moved. At first, I thought I had woken because of footsteps. Slow, measured footsteps from the floor above us. Step, pause. Step, pause. The exact same interval each time, like someone was counting distance instead of walking. Then I realized Andrew's sleeping bag beside me was empty. His flashlight was still there. His boots were still there. His backpack was still zipped. I whispered his name. "Andrew?" The footsteps stopped. The entire hospital stopped with them. No wind, no settling wood, no dripping water, no breathing from the others. For 10 full seconds, Blackwood State Hospital became so silent it felt like the world had been muted. Then Andrew's voice came from the ceiling, soft, calm, close. "Randy," he whispered, "don't let them count you." And from somewhere deep in the basement, another Andrew whispered the same thing half a second later. Then another, from the hallway outside the cafeteria. Then another, from inside the wall behind my head. All of them my friend. All of them afraid. All of them waiting for me to answer. Part 2. The empty sleeping bag I did not answer. That is the only reason I am alive. I know that sounds dramatic, maybe even convenient, like something a person says after surviving a thing they still do not understand. But I have replayed that moment so many times that it feels less like a memory now and more like a worn piece of film. Andrew's voice came from above me, then below me, then from the cafeteria entrance, then from the wall behind my head. All of them whispering the same sentence. Randy, don't let them count you. I sat there in my sleeping bag with my mouth open and my throat locked shut, like some part of my body knew before my mind did that speaking would make it worse. The others were still asleep. At least, they looked asleep. Trevor lay on his side with one arm over his face. Barry had rolled half out of his sleeping bag. Lexi was curled near the windows, with her camera strap wrapped around her rich wrist, like she was afraid someone might take it. None of them moved. Andrew's sleeping bag beside me was empty. The fabric lay flat, not kicked open, not twisted, not warm from a person recently leaving it. Just flat, smooth, wrong. His flashlight was still on the floor where he always kept it. His boots sat side by side at the edge of the bag. That was what made me start shaking. Andrew would forget food before he forgot his flashlight. He would sleep in wet clothes before he walked barefoot through an abandoned hospital. I reached toward his sleeping bag, then stopped myself. I do not know why. Maybe I was afraid touching it would make whatever happened real. Maybe I was afraid something under the fabric would touch me back. The whispering stopped all at once. Not faded. Stopped. The whole hospital returned to that heavy, dead silence we had noticed when we first climbed through the basement window. No echo, no wind, no old pipes ticking. Even the distant drip of water somewhere below us had disappeared. I looked at my watch again. 2:38. 1 minute had passed. That was impossible to me. I felt like I had been sitting there for half an hour, maybe longer, frozen in a circle of sleeping bags, while my missing friend whispered from 4 different places. Then, from the floor above us, I heard footsteps. Slow, measured, step, pause, step, pause. They moved across the ceiling in a straight line, not wandering, not searching, counting. I knew immediately that whoever was walking was not barefoot. The sound was too heavy, too deliberate. But when I looked at Andrew's boots again, they were still beside his sleeping bag. The footsteps reached the far end of the room above us and stopped. Then a door opened. It creaked just enough to be heard. A pause, then it closed. Another door opened, a pause, then it closed, room by room, door by door. Something was checking the floor above us. I almost woke Trevor. My hand actually moved toward his shoulder. But before I touched him, Andrew's voice came from the darkness under the cafeteria serving counter. Not yet, it whispered. I pulled my hand back. I did not sleep after that. I sat upright until dawn, holding my flashlight against my chest, watching Andrew's empty sleeping bag, as if he might slowly rise up out of it. The noises continued for another hour. Footsteps, doors, a dragging sound from somewhere above us, like a heavy chair being pulled across old linoleum. Then nothing. By the time gray morning light reached the cafeteria windows, I had convinced myself that I had misunderstood something. Fear does that. It gives you permission to lie to yourself if the truth is too large to fit inside your head. Maybe Andrew had sleepwalked. Maybe the voices were some trick of the building. Maybe sound traveled strangely in Blackwood. Maybe I had dreamed it. Then Barry woke up and said, "Where's Andrew?" That was when the dream excuse died. Trevor sat up first, confused and annoyed, the way people look when they are dragged out of sleep too fast. Lexi opened her eyes and immediately reached for her camera. I remember that detail because it was so her. Before she even understood something was wrong, her hand went to the thing that helped her prove the world was real. Barry stood beside Andrew's sleeping bag in his socks. He kept looking from the empty bag to Andrew's boots, then back again. "Guys," he said, "this isn't funny." Nobody laughed. Lexi crawled over and touched Andrew's sleeping bag. Her face changed. "What?" Trevor asked. "It's cold." I already knew that. I had known all night. Trevor pressed his hand against the fabric. He pulled it back like the sleeping bag had burned him. "Jesus." "It was empty when I woke up," I said. Everyone looked at me. When? Lexi asked. I swallowed. 2:37. The number seemed to hang there. Trevor's eyes moved toward his folder of research without him meaning to. I saw it happen. He remembered patient 237, the old report, the handwritten warning. Barry did too. Don't start, he said. Don't make this into one of Trevor's stories. I'm not, I said. But I was, or rather the hospital was. I told them what I had heard, not everything at first. I left out the voices from the walls because saying it in daylight felt insane. I told them about the footsteps, the doors opening above us, the way Andrew's bag was already empty when I woke. Lexi listened without interrupting. Trevor looked pale but focused, the way he got when fear and curiosity were fighting inside him. Barry kept shaking his head. He probably went to take a leak, Barry said. Got turned around. Maybe he's outside. Without shoes? Lexi asked. Barry looked at Andrew's boots. And without his flashlight? I added. Nobody answered that. We called for him from the cafeteria first. Andrew. Our voices died almost immediately. They did not carry into the hall. They did not bounce off the cafeteria walls. They left our mouths, traveled a few feet, and disappeared. Trevor noticed. He always noticed details when he was scared. Same as yesterday, he said quietly. The sound is being absorbed, Barry glared at him. By what, Trevor? The spooky bricks? Trevor did not answer. We searched the second floor together at first. Every patient room, every storage closet. The bathrooms with broken mirrors and rust-stained sinks. The old kitchen behind the cafeteria, where trays still sat stacked beneath a layer of dust so thick it looked soft. Nothing. No Andrew, no footprints. That became the first real problem. The floors were filthy. Decades of dust, plaster, mouse droppings, pieces of ceiling tile, dead leaves blown in through broken windows. Anywhere we walked, we left marks. Clear ones. Andrew had left none. Not from his sleeping bag. Not to the cafeteria door. Not into the hallway. Not anywhere. It looked as if he had been lifted straight up out of his bag. Or erased from it. We split after that, which I know sounds stupid. It was stupid. But panic has a way of disguising itself as a plan. Trevor and Barry went to search the first and third floors. Lexi and I took the basement because I had heard something under the serving counter, though I still had not told her that part. The stairwell felt colder than it had the day before. Our flashlights moved over the same metal steps we had climbed on the way in. They should have clanged beneath our weight. Instead, each step made a soft, dead thud. Lexi stopped halfway down. Did Andrew say anything to you yesterday? What do you mean? She kept her light aimed at the steps. Before we came here. Did he seem off? I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect the version of Andrew I still understood. But I remembered him in Barry's kitchen, staring at patient 237's file. I remembered him in the cafeteria asking if a place could know your name before you told it. I remembered him watching the entrance like he expected someone. He asked me something weird, I said. What? If I ever felt like a place knew my name. Lexi closed her eyes. You knew? I asked. No, she said. Not knew. But she did not keep walking. The basement waited below us. Finally, she said, he had nightmares. Andrew? She nodded. For a few weeks, maybe longer. He only told me after Meridian. He said he kept dreaming about empty buildings. Same dream every time. He would walk through a hallway and hear footsteps one floor above him. If he stopped, they stopped. If he called out, the voice that answered sounded like someone he loved. I felt something cold open inside my chest. Who? Lexi looked at me then. He never said. But once, when he was half asleep in the car, he said, she's not my mother, but she sounds like her. We did not speak for the rest of the way down. The basement gave us nothing at first. Storage rooms, broken filing cabinets, moldy insulation hanging from the ceiling, the same metallic taste in the air. We called Andrew's name until our voices went rough. Nothing answered. Near the old records room, Lexi found the first document. It was wedged under a fallen shelf, protected from water damage by a sheet of warped plastic. Most of the pages had fused together, but the top page was readable. Blackwood State Hospital Acoustic Response Study. Dr. Elizabeth Cray Subject Series. 237. Trevor had mentioned Cray the night before. The psychiatrist who treated patient 237. The one who believed trauma could leave impressions in a building. At the bottom of the page was a handwritten note in faded blue ink. The voice repeats until answered. On the 237th response, exchange becomes permanent. Lexi read it once, then again. What does that mean? She whispered. I thought of Andrew calling my name from the ceiling, from the basement, from behind me. I thought of my mother's text. If you hear someone you love in that place, do not answer. I think, I said slowly, someone found a way to make missing people into bait. Lexi stared at the page. Then we heard Trevor scream from somewhere above us. Not a startled yell, not a call for help. A real scream. Lexi ran first. I followed her up the stairs, slipping once, catching myself on the railing. The hospital swallowed the sound of our footsteps, but Trevor screamed again, and this time I could hear words inside it. Randy, get up here. We found him on the 3rd floor outside a patient room. Barry stood beside him, white-faced. His flashlight pointed through the doorway. At first, I thought they had found Andrew. They had not. The room was empty except for a metal bed frame, a collapsed mattress, and writing on the wall. Not graffiti, not old patient scratches, fresh writing, made in the dust with a finger. 237 vertical marks covered the wall beside the bed. Under them, someone had written, Randy Morrison heard the first call at age 6. I could not move. Lexi said my name, but her voice sounded far away. Age 6. That was when the night terrors started. That was when my mother began sleeping outside my bedroom door. That was when I first heard a boy crying from inside my closet, begging me to let him out. I had forgotten that, or I had been made to forget it. Behind us, Andrew's voice spoke from the dark hallway. You're remembering too early, he said. We turned our flashlights toward the sound. The hallway was empty. Then the voice came again, this time from inside the room with the writing. Soft, patient, almost sad. Start over, Randy. And somewhere inside the walls, something began to count. Part 3. The pattern appears, the counting did not sound like a voice at first. That was what made it worse. It came from inside the wall of room 314 as a series of soft ticks, each one spaced almost exactly 1 second apart. Not a clock, not dripping water, not pipes cooling in the old bones of the building. Tick, pause, tick, pause, tick. Like someone tapping a fingernail against the other side of the plaster. We stood there in the 3rd floor hallway with our flashlights aimed at an empty patient room, where my full name had been written in dust by something that knew about a childhood I had never told anyone. Randy Morrison heard the first call at age 6. I wanted to say it was a prank. I wanted to say Andrew had written it before disappearing, that he was hiding somewhere nearby, trying to scare us because that was easier than accepting anything else. But Andrew did not know about age 6. No one did. Not Trevor, not Lexi, not Barry, not even me, not really. The memory came back in pieces as I stared at the words. A closet door. My mother sleeping on the carpet outside my bedroom. A boy crying from somewhere in the dark. Not a monster. Not a shadow. A boy. He sounded older than me, maybe 10 or 11. And he kept saying, I can hear you breathing. I had forgotten that sentence for 12 years. Then Blackwood gave it back to me. Tick, pause, tick. Trevor stepped into the room first, because Trevor had the kind of fear that needed evidence. He held his camera in one hand and his flashlight in the other, moving like he expected the wall to open. Don't touch anything, Lexi said. He gave a tight, humorless laugh. I wasn't planning to. Barry stayed in the hall. He had gone completely quiet since the scream. Barry was loud when he was comfortable, louder when he was nervous, but this silence was different. He looked like he was listening to none of us could hear. I knew the feeling. Trevor aimed his camera at the wall. The 237 marks looked uneven at first, but the longer I stared, the more I saw the order in them. They were grouped in threes. 3 vertical lines, a space. 3 more, a space. over and over until they covered half the wall. "Why threes?" Lexi whispered. Trevor lifted his light to the top row. "No," he said, "not threes." He pointed. The groups were not just marks. They were arranged around old cracks in the plaster, using the damaged wall like a grid. Some lines were longer. Some were shorter. Some leaned left or right. "It's notation," Trevor said. Barry finally spoke from the hall. "Notation for what?" Trevor did not answer right away. He pulled a folded page from his research folder, the photocopy from Dr. Cray's report, and held it near the wall. His hands were shaking badly enough that the paper trembled in the flashlight beam. "I saw something like this last night," he said, "in one of the scans. I thought it was patient scribbling." He looked at me. "I think it's a count." "You think?" Barry said. "It literally looks like a count." "No, I mean a directional count." Lexi's face tightened. "Like coordinates? Maybe. Or sound positions." The ticking stopped. All of us froze. For the first time since we entered Blackwood, the silence felt aware of us. Then Andrew's voice spoke from the room's dead intercom speaker. 3 locations make a witness. The speaker was broken. The front grille was rusted inward, and a bird had built a nest in the corner of it years ago. There was no power in the building, no hum in the walls, no red light, no click before the voice, just Andrew. Calm, close, wrong. Trevor backed out of the room so fast he hit the doorframe. Lexi raised her camera, then lowered it again, like filming would offend whatever had just spoken. Barry whispered, "Andrew?" The intercom stayed silent. I grabbed Barry's arm before he could step closer. "Don't." He looked at me, angry and terrified. "What if it's him?" "It isn't. You don't know that." But I did, not with logic, not yet. But the part of me that remembered being 6 knew. The boy in my closet had done the same thing. He had sounded lonely. Small. Real. He had waited until I felt sorry for him. Then he had asked me to open the door. My mother had burst into the room before I touched the handle. I remembered that now too. She had slapped my hand away from the closet so hard I cried. Then she held me for the rest of the night, shaking worse than I was. At the time, I thought she was scared for me. Now I wondered if she had been scared of what she almost let back in. Trevor kept recording the wall for another minute before Lexi made him stop. "We need to go," she said. Nobody argued this time. We did not even pretend we were still searching for Andrew. We were searching for a way out. The 3rd-floor hallway seemed longer than before. I know people say that in stories, and it sounds like a cliché, but I mean it literally. The nurse's station had been maybe 30 feet from room 314 when we arrived. On the way back, it took us almost 3 minutes to reach it. Every door we passed had a number: 312, 313, 314, 315, 316. We stopped in front of the 3rd room, 314. The door was shut. The first 2 had been open. Barry made a sound under his breath. "Nope," he said. "Absolutely not." Lexi turned around. Behind us, the hallway stretched in the other direction, lined with doors that had not been there before. Their numbers were handwritten in black marker over old brass plates. 231, 233, 234. Trevor whispered no. The next door was 235, then 236. At the far end of the hall, where there should have been a stairwell, stood a dark wooden door with a frosted glass window. 237. Behind it, someone was humming. Not Andrew. A woman. My knees weakened before I understood why. It was the song from Riverside. The song my mother used to hum when I had night terrors. Ships finding their way home by counting stars. Lexi touched my shoulder. "Randy, I know that song," I said. My voice did not sound like mine. The humming stopped. Then my mother's voice came through the door. Not a recording. Not an echo. Her voice as I knew it when I was little, softer and younger than it was now. "Randy, baby, step away from the door," I almost answered. That is the closest I came that day. One word rose in my throat. Mom. It would have been so easy, natural, automatic. The way your body responds before your mind catches up. Lexi clamped her hand over my mouth. Hard. For 1 second, I hated her. Then the door marked 237 began to breathe. Not open. Breathe. The wood expanded inward, then relaxed. Expanded again, slow and wet, as if the room behind it had lungs. My mother's voice whispered through the glass. "Good girl, Lexi." Lexi went rigid. The voice continued. Always the practical one. No one moved, because my mother did not know Lexi. She had never met Lexi. She knew her name only because the hospital knew it. The hallway lights flickered. That was impossible too, because there were no working lights in Blackwood. But for half a second, the fluorescent tubes above us buzzed weakly to life. And in that sick blue-white flash, I saw the hallway as it must have looked decades ago. Clean floor, painted doors. Patients in pale gowns standing shoulder to shoulder along both walls. All of them facing us. All of them with their mouths open. No sound came out. Then the lights died, and the hallway was ruined again. Dust, peeling paint, darkness. Empty. Trevor started crying quietly. He did not sob, he did not cover his face. Tears just ran down while he stared at the door, marked 237, still holding the useless camera in his hand. Barry grabbed him. "Move." That broke whatever hold the hallway had on us. We ran. We did not care about noise anymore. We pounded down the hall, passing wrong, repeated numbers, patient rooms that smelled suddenly of disinfectant and hot dust. The building swallowed our footsteps like it had swallowed everything else. But behind us, something began counting louder. Not ticks now, voices. One voice at first. Andrew's. 1. Then my mother's voice. 2. Then a man I did not recognize. 3. Then a child. 4. More voices joined with every number. Male, female, old, young, close, distant, human, not quite human. By the time we reached the stairwell, they were at 27. The stairs were not where they should have been. Instead of leading down to the second floor, they descended into a corridor lined with lockers, trophy cases, and cracked classroom doors. An abandoned school. I had seen it before, not in person. In dreams. Riverside had given me the song. Blackwood had given me the number. Now it was giving me a place from childhood that I had never visited, but somehow remembered. Lexi whispered, "This isn't the hospital." Trevor lowered his camera. On the wall beside the stairs, a framed photograph hung under dusty glass. It showed a group of doctors standing in front of Blackwood State Hospital, sometime in the 1970s. Dr. Elizabeth Cray was in the center. I knew her from Trevor's research photo. Beside her stood a teenage girl with dark hair, holding a bundled baby. My mother, younger than I had ever seen her. The baby's face was turned away from the camera. On the back of the frame, someone had scratched 5 words into the wood. The first son heard her. I backed away from the photograph. "No," I said. My voice cracked. "No, that's not possible." Andrew's voice answered from the bottom of the school corridor. "It was possible before you were born." The counting stopped. For one perfect second, nobody breathed. Then every locker in the impossible hallway opened at once. Inside each one was the same thing, a hospital bracelet, yellowed with age. Each bracelet had a name. Most I did not recognize, but the nearest one, hanging from a rusted hook, had my last name printed on it in faded black type. Morrison, Andrew. Date of birth, 10/31/2007. I stared at it, unable to make sense of the year, the name, the impossible fact of it. Andrew was older than me. Andrew was not born in 2007. Andrew was not a Morrison. He was not my family. Then from the far end of the school corridor, in the dark beyond our flashlights, Andrew said, "You keep saying that like Mom didn't choose you." Part 4. The hospital remembers me. Andrew's voice came from the dark at the end of the school corridor. "You keep saying that like Mom didn't choose you." None of us moved. The open lockers lined both sides of the hallway, every metal door hanging wide, every hospital bracelet dangling from a hook inside. Our flashlights trembled over names, dates, patient numbers, old plastic bands gone yellow with age. But I could only look at one. Morrison, Andrew, date of birth, 10/31/2007. That was impossible in several different ways. Andrew was 19. I was 18. He had been born in June, or at least that was what he always said. His last name was Callahan. His mother was named Lisa. His father had died when Andrew was 12. I knew these facts the way you know the basic shape of your friends' lives, the way people know enough to believe they know everything important. But the bracelet said Morrison, my last name, and somewhere past the reach of our lights, Andrew was waiting in the dark, calling my mother Mom. Barry was the first one to speak. "No," he said. "No, I'm done. I'm not doing this." He backed away from the locker, almost tripping over a broken piece of floor tile. "Barry?" Lexi said. "No, don't bury me. That hallway wasn't here. Those lockers weren't here. We are inside a hospital, not a school. Andrew is not Randy's brother. None of this is real." I wanted to agree with him. I needed to agree with him. But the smell in the corridor had changed. That was what made my stomach turn. It did not smell like Blackwood anymore. The metallic basement taste was gone. The air smelled like floor wax, pencil shavings, damp paper, and the faint sour smell of cafeteria milk. An elementary school. Not just any school. My school. I had never told the others about it, because there was nothing interesting to tell. Newberry Elementary, 2 floors. Brick walls. A playground with cracked blacktop. A hallway of blue lockers outside the music room. But I knew the scratch on the tile near my left shoe. I knew the trophy case with the missing glass panel. I knew the painted paper stars taped above the classroom doors. This was my elementary school, or something built from my memory of it. Trevor whispered. "How does it know this?" Andrew answered from the dark. "It doesn't know, it keeps." His voice did not echo. It arrived cleanly, almost gently, as if he were standing beside me. Lexi lifted her flashlight higher. "Andrew, if that's really you, step into the light." For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then a shape moved at the far end of the hall. Tall, human, barefoot. The beam caught the lower half first. Jeans, a torn jacket, one hand hanging at his side. Then the light moved up. It was Andrew, or it had Andrew's face. He stood 20 yards away under a dead fluorescent light, pale and still, his eyes open too wide. His feet were filthy, but not bleeding. His clothes looked dry, though there was a dark stain spreading across the front of his shirt like shadow soaked into fabric. "Andrew," Barry breathed. Andrew tilted his head. Not much, just enough to make the movement feel wrong. Then he smiled. It was Andrew's smile, but without any warmth behind it. "Barry," he said, "you should have left when you wanted to." Barry made a sound like he had been punched. Lexi grabbed his sleeve before he could run toward him, or away from him. Maybe both. I stared at Andrew's face and waited for recognition to save me. There should have been something there. Some flicker, some private sign between friends. The kind of look he gave me when Trevor was being dramatic, or when Barry said something stupid, or when I was pretending not to be scared. There was nothing, just Andrew's body being used like a photograph someone had learned to move. "Where is he?" I asked. The smile faded. Andrew's mouth opened, but my mother's voice came out. "Still asking the wrong question, Randy." I stepped backward so fast I hit the lockers behind me. All the hospital bracelets began to swing, not from wind. There was no wind. They clicked softly against the metal hooks, hundreds of tiny plastic sounds, all out of rhythm at first, then settling into one steady pattern. Tick, tick, tick. Trevor looked down at the camera in his hand. The red recording light was blinking. "I'm getting this," whispered. Then the screen changed. Instead of the hallway, Trevor's camera showed the cafeteria, our sleeping bags, our gear, Andrew's empty spot. But the timestamp in the corner read 2:37 a.m. Trevor turned the camera toward the hallway again. The screen still showed the cafeteria. In the footage, I was sitting upright in my sleeping bag, staring at Andrew's empty place. But that had already happened. It had happened hours ago. The camera zoomed in by itself. On the screen, past my own shoulder, a woman stood in the darkness behind me. My mother. Not the version I knew now. The teenage girl from the photograph. Her hand was over my mouth. Trevor dropped the camera. The screen cracked, but it kept playing. My recorded self turned slowly toward the woman behind me. Then the woman whispered something into my ear. Even through the broken speaker, I heard it clearly. Second sons are easier to save. The hallway around us began to shift, not violently, not like an earthquake. Worse than that, quietly. The lockers stretched taller, the floor tiles lengthened. The classroom doors narrowed into hospital doors. The paper stars above them peeled backward into old medical charts. The trophy case glass clouded over until it became the safety window of a nurse's station. The school became Blackwood again, or Blackwood stopped pretending to be a school. Andrew's figure at the far end of the hall was gone. In his place stood a door that should not have been there. Dark wood, frosted glass, the number 237 painted in black. Barry started toward the stairwell. This time, none of us stopped him. We followed. The stairwell was exactly where it should have been, which somehow made it feel less trustworthy. We ran down one flight, then another. I counted the landings without meaning to. 3rd floor, 2nd floor, 1st floor, basement. But when Barry shoved open the basement door, we stepped back into the 3rd floor hallway. Room 314 waited on our left. The wall still had my name written in dust. Barry screamed and slammed the door shut. He opened it again. Same hallway. He tried the next floor down. Same hallway. He tried running upward instead. Same hallway. Every door in the stairwell led back to the place where Blackwood had written my childhood on the wall. We were not lost. The hospital had simplified the map. Lexi grabbed my arm. "Call your mother." I looked at her like I had not understood the words. "What?" "Your phone. You got her text before the signal died. Try calling her." "There's no service." "Try." My hands were numb when I pulled out my phone. No bars. No Wi-Fi. Battery at 23 Fincham. The screen was cracked from earlier, though I did not remember dropping it. My mother's text was still open. "If you hear someone you love in that place, do not answer." Below it was another message, unread. It had arrived at 2:37 a.m. I did not want to open it. Lexi saw my face. "What does it say?" I tapped the screen. The new message contained only 3 words. He heard first. Before I could react, the phone began ringing in my hand. "Mom." The sound filled the hallway. Not loud, not distorted. Just my normal ringtone, bright and absurd in that dead building. I answered before I thought. "Mom?" For 1 second, there was only static. Then my mother breathed in, not relief. "Fear Randy," she said. "Where are you?" I started to cry the second I heard her real voice. I had not known I was that close to breaking until she said my name. "Blackwood," I said. The line went silent. Then, quietly, she said, "How many times has he called you?" I looked at Lexi, Trevor, Barry. None of them spoke. "Mom," I said. "What is Andrew?" She made a sound I had never heard from her before. Not a sob, not exactly. More like pain being swallowed before it could become words. "Do not call him that in there." "Why?" "Because names give it shape." "Mom, his bracelet says Morrison." She began crying then. I had heard my mother cry before. At funerals during once, when my father was in the hospital for chest pains that turned out to be nothing. But this was different. This was the sound of someone who had spent their whole life keeping one door closed, only to hear it open on the other end of a phone line. "I tried to keep you away," she said. "From what?" "From him, from her, from what we did." The fluorescent lights above us flickered again, weak and buzzing. At the far end of the hall, the door marked 237 appeared. It was closer now, maybe 10 yards away. "Mom," I whispered, "is Andrew my brother?" The line filled with static. For a few seconds, I thought we had lost her. Then she said, "He was born before you." The hallway tilted. I grabbed the wall to stay upright. Barry said, "No way." Lexi whispered my name. Trevor looked like he had stopped breathing. "He was born before you," my mother repeated. "But he was not supposed to live outside that place." "What does that mean?" "Randy, listen to me. You cannot save him by answering. That is what it wants you to believe. He's alive." "No," she said. The word broke something in me. "He's calling me. I know. He knows things. I know. He said you chose me." My mother stopped crying. When she spoke again, her voice was very small. "I did." The door marked 237 opened an inch. Darkness breathed through the gap. My phone crackled, and another voice slid under my mother's. Andrew. Close to the microphone. She always answers when she's guilty. My mother heard it. I know she did, because she screamed my name through the phone. Hang up. Andrew's voice continued, soft and intimate, speaking through the same line. Ask her about the first son, Randy. I could hear my mother sobbing beneath him. Ask her why she left me in the room that should not exist. The door at the end of the hall opened wider. Behind it was not a patient room, not the cafeteria, not the basement. It was my childhood bedroom. Blue walls, glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. The closet door cracked open, and from inside that closet came the crying boy I had forgotten for 12 years. I can hear you breathing, he whispered. My mother screamed again. Do not go near that door. But I was already walking. I do not remember choosing to move. One moment I was standing with the phone against my ear, and the next my feet were carrying me down the hallway toward the room where my childhood had been waiting inside Blackwood all along. Lexi grabbed me from behind. I fought her. I actually fought her. I am ashamed of that now. She wrapped both arms around my chest, and I tore at her hands like she was the danger, like the door was the only thing in the world that could explain me. Trevor and Barry helped pull me back. My phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. My mother's voice came through the speaker, tiny and frantic. Randy, if you hear the count, close your eyes. The door marked 237 opened all the way. Inside my childhood bedroom, the closet door moved. 1 inch. 2. 3. The crying boy stopped crying. Then Andrew's voice, my friend's voice, my maybe brother's voice, spoke from inside the closet. I waited where she put me. The lights went out. In the dark, something touched my face with small, cold fingers. Not an adult hand, a child's, and it whispered into my ear. You were 6 when you first heard me, because that was the year Mom almost brought me home. Part 5. The child my mother buried. Without a grave, the hand on my face was small. That was the detail that broke me. Not the darkness. Not the door that had opened into my childhood bedroom in the middle of an abandoned hospital. Not Andrew's voice coming from a closet I had once been afraid to sleep near. It was the size of the fingers. Cold little fingertips pressed against my cheek, careful and curious, the way a child touches something fragile they have been told not to break. Then the whisper came again, right beside my ear. You were 6 when you first heard me, because that was the year Mom almost brought me home. I could not see anything. The lights had gone out all at once, and the hallway was so black that my eyes could not even invent shapes in it. I heard Lexi breathing behind me. Trevor was muttering, "No, no, no," under his breath. Barry was somewhere to my left, saying my name over and over in a voice that sounded like he was trying to wake me from sleep. The small hand remained on my cheek. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab it. I wanted to apologize. That last impulse terrified me most of all. Under the impossibility, under everything my mind was trying to reject, there was recognition. Not memory exactly, recognition. As if some part of me had always known that my childhood closet was not empty. The phone lay on the floor near my feet. My mother's voice came through the speaker, distant and broken by static. Randy, close your eyes. They're already closed, I whispered. The small hand moved from my cheek to my mouth. One finger pressed gently against my lips. Don't tell her I'm here, the child whispered. Then the lights came back, not fully. Just a weak emergency glow from bulbs that should not have had power. Red light filled the hallway, thin and pulsing, like the inside of something alive. The hand was gone. The door marked 237 was gone too. So was my childhood bedroom. We were standing in the 3rd floor hallway again, outside room 314, with my name still written in dust on the wall. But now there was another line beneath it. Mother answered on call 236. Barry saw it first. What does that mean, he asked. Nobody answered. Because we all knew what it meant. Not completely, not yet, but enough. There was one call left. Trevor crouched and picked up my phone with 2 fingers, as if it had become contaminated. My mother's call was still connected. Static hissed from the speaker. "Mrs. Morrison?" Trevor said. "Can you hear us?" For a second, nothing. Then my mother said, "Who is this?" "It's Trevor. I'm with Randy." "Give him the phone." Trevor looked at me. I shook my head. I did not trust myself to hear her voice. Lexi took the phone instead. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, steady in a way I will always be grateful for. "We need to know what happened here." My mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "There's a records room below the nursery ward." Lexi looked at me. "Nursery ward? It won't be on the map," my mother said. "It was sealed before the hospital closed. If the building has shown you Ward 237, you're close." Barry laughed once, sharp and panicked. "The building has shown us Randy's childhood bedroom, actually, so I'd say the map is already useless." My mother began to cry again, but she kept talking. "There will be a dumbwaiter shaft behind the old nurse's station. Don't use the stairs if they appear. The stairs lie. The stairs lie." She said it like that was a normal sentence. Like this was something she had known for years. "Mom," I said. My voice came out before I could stop it. The static deepened. Then she whispered, "I'm sorry." I hated her for saying it. Not because the apology was wrong, but because it was too early. Too small. You cannot throw "I'm sorry" across a phone line into a place like Blackwood and expect it to reach the bottom. "What is Andrew?" I asked. She did not correct the name this time. He was my son. The hallway seemed to tilt around me. Even after the bracelet, even after the photograph, even after hearing Andrew call her mom, some stupid loyal part of me had still been waiting for another explanation. Adoption mix-up. Fake records. The hospital lying. Anything. But my mother said it plainly. He was my son. Not might have been, not I thought he died. Was. Trevor lowered his head. Lexi closed her eyes. Barry whispered, "Oh my God." I leaned against the wall. "Why didn't you tell me?" My mother made that same swallowed sound again. "Because I wanted one child to grow up outside of it. One child. That hurt more than if she had said your brother. Because it meant she had already sorted us in her mind. One child lost. One child saved. One name buried. One name spoken at birthdays, school plays, doctor appointments, dinner tables. Did Dad know?" I asked. No, that answer came too fast. Maybe it was true. Maybe it was another mercy she gave herself. Lexi still held the phone. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, "how do we find the records room?" My mother breathed in shakily. "Third floor nurse's station. There's a medication cabinet behind the desk. It isn't really a cabinet. Pull the bottom drawer out completely. Don't look through the window while you do it." "Why?" "Because sometimes it looks back." Barry put both hands over his face. Absolutely insane sentence number 2. But he followed us. That is something I have never been able to forget. Barry was terrified. We all were. But he followed. The nurse's station waited around the corner, though I swear it had been farther away before. Its safety glass was cloudy with dust. Behind it stood a chair, an old switchboard, and a wall of cabinets. We climbed through the broken service window one at a time. I tried not to look at the glass. Of course I looked. At first, I only saw our reflections. Lexi with the phone pressed to her ear, Trevor holding his broken camera, Barry pale and sweating, me standing behind them like someone had scooped out everything young from my face. Then the reflection changed. There were 5 of us. Andrew stood behind me. Not the wrong smiling thing from the hallway. Andrew, my Andrew, tired, barefoot, scared. His lips moved in the glass. I could not hear him, but I knew what he said. "Don't answer me." I turned around. He was not there. Lexi yanked open the bottom drawer of the medication cabinet. It stuck halfway, then slid out with a scream of rusted metal. Behind it was a square opening just large enough for a person to crawl through. Cold air poured out. Not basement air. Older, wetter. The kind of air that has never touched sunlight. Trevor aimed his flashlight inside. A narrow shaft descended behind the wall. Rusted ladder rungs ran down into darkness. Painted on the inside of the shaft in neat black letters was a phrase. "The family is the circuit. Below it, the voice is the current. Below that, the answer is the switch." Lexi read the words silently. Then she looked at me. The phone crackled. My mother said, "That wasn't there before." "Before?" I said. She did not answer. I took the phone from Lexi. "You were here. Static. You were here and Grandpa was here and Andrew was born here. Stop giving us little pieces like I'm still 6 years old." For the first time, my mother did not tell me to calm down. "Yes," she said. That one word made Blackwood feel colder. She told us enough to keep us moving, and not enough to save us from what came next. She had been 16 when her father brought her to Blackwood. "Not as a patient," she said. "Not officially." Her father worked maintenance for the hospital and sometimes helped Dr. Cray with equipment after hours. Speakers, intercoms, recording devices, soundproofing. Dr. Cray was not only studying patients, she was studying families, people with grief, people with secrets, people who had lost someone and would do anything to hear them again. She said voices left pressure behind, my mother whispered, like fingerprints in the air. Patient 237 had been the first proof. David Henley could hear dead relatives through walls, or claimed he could. But Dr. Cray believed the walls were not giving him hallucinations. She believed they were responding to him. Then she found families who responded too strongly. Families that kept answering. Families like mine. "My mother died when I was young," my mother said. "Your grandfather never recovered. Dr. Cray promised him he could hear her again. And he believed her, he wanted to. That was all it took, apparently. Wanting to. Dr. Cray built her theorem around that weakness. Around grief. Around the way people answer when someone they love calls from another room. My grandfather brought my mother into the experiment because grief passed through blood, Cray believed. Some families carried it like a condition. Some names resonated better than others. Morrison was one of them. "And Andrew?" I asked. The line went quiet. I could hear my mother crying softly. "He was born during the last trial." My hand tightened around the phone. "The first son," I said. "Yes. What did you do to him?" My mother did not speak. "What did you do?" The hospital answered for her. Every intercom on the third floor crackled at once. A recording began to play. Not Andrew's voice. Not my mother now. My mother then, 16 years old, screaming, "Please, he's breathing. I can hear him breathing." Then Dr. Cray, calm and clinical. "The infant is responding to the maternal voice at impossible distance. Mark this as call 1. A man spoke next, my grandfather. "Elizabeth, you said this would bring my wife back." Dr. Cray replied. "It still might, but the child is a stronger anchor." My mother screamed again. The recording cut into static. I slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor of the nurse's station. No one touched me. I was grateful for that. Because if anyone had been kind to me right then, I think I would have fallen apart completely. My mother whispered through the phone, "I thought he died." The intercom clicked. Andrew's voice came through. Older now, my friend's voice. "No, Mom, you hoped I did." Lexi covered her mouth. Barry backed toward the service window. Trevor stood frozen with the flashlight aimed at the shaft. My mother said, "That isn't him." Andrew laughed softly through the speaker. It was the first time I had heard his laugh since the night before. "Tell him about the adoption," he said. "Tell him how you signed me away after the hospital couldn't finish counting." My mother sobbed. The worst part was that I believed both of them. I believed my mother had been 16 and terrified. I believed Dr. Cray had used her. I believed my grandfather had sacrificed his daughter's child to chase the voice of his dead wife. And I believed Andrew had been left behind, in some way no adoption paper could fix. Lexi looked into the shaft again. "There's a light down there." Trevor stepped closer. Far below, at the bottom of the shaft, a red bulb glowed. Then another, then another. One by one, lights appeared in a line beneath the hospital, marking a path downward. My mother heard us moving. "No," she said. "Don't go down there." "You told us to find the records room," I said. "I told you because I thought you needed the truth." "We do." "No, Randy. You need to leave before it gives you the choice." "What choice?" The line filled with static again. When it cleared, my mother sounded very far away. The same one it gave me. Behind us, the hallway began to count. Not voices this time. Footsteps. One step above us, one step below us, one step inside the wall. The number was not spoken, but I felt it anyway. 236. Lexi looked at me. We have to move. Barry shook his head. Down the creepy murder shaft? That's the plan? Trevor said. If Andrew's anywhere, he's down there. I stood. My legs felt numb. I put the phone to my ear one last time. Mom. She was crying too hard to answer. Did you choose me over him? Silence. Then, barely audible. I chose the child I could still carry out. That was the closest she ever came to telling the truth. I handed the phone back to Lexi and climbed into the shaft. The metal rungs were slick and cold. Below me, the red lights pulsed one after another into the dark, guiding us toward the part of Blackwood my family had spent 18 years pretending did not exist. Above us, from the broken intercom, Andrew whispered, "Careful, little brother. This is where she left me breathing." Part 6. The room that should not exist. The shaft went down farther than the hospital was tall. That was the first thing I understood. Not with measurements, not with logic. I was too scared for that. But I had climbed enough stairwells and enough abandoned buildings to know distance by the ache in my arms and the burn in my legs. Blackwood was 7 stories above ground. This went lower than 7 stories. Lower than a basement. Lower than any maintenance level a hospital should have needed. The red bulbs continued beneath us, one after another, pulsing faintly in the dark like a heartbeat that had forgotten what body it belonged to. I climbed first. Lexi came after me with my phone tucked into her jacket pocket, still connected to my mother. Trevor followed her, trying to keep his broken camera from banging against the ladder. Barry was last, breathing hard and swearing under his breath in a steady rhythm that almost sounded like prayer. The metal rungs were wet, not dripping, not rusted through, just slick, as if the shaft had been sweating for years. Halfway down, Lexi whispered my name. I looked up. Her flashlight beam shook against the wall beside her. There were scratches in the concrete. Not random marks. Names. Hundreds of them. Some had dates. Some had patient numbers. Some had little circles scratched beside them, like someone had tried to draw halos and given up. Near my right hand, I saw David Henley, 237, heard his mother. Through brick answered 237 times. Below that, Evelyn Morrison, heard her dead daughter through water pipes, answered 89 times Evelyn Morrison. My grandmother. I almost lost my grip. I had never known her. She died before I was born. My mother barely spoke about her, and when she did, it was with the careful distance adults use when a grief is too old to explain and too large to throw away. But there she was, not as a family memory, as data. A name carved into the wall of a place my family had pretended did not exist. "Keep moving," Trevor whispered. His voice sounded wrong in the shaft, too close, like he was speaking from inside my skull. Below us, something clicked, a speaker turning on. Then my mother's voice rose from Lexi's pocket. "Randy?" It sounded far away now, stretched thin by distance and static. "I'm here," I said. "Don't read the walls." Too late. I kept climbing down. Names passed under my hands. Patients, nurses, children, families. Some marked answered, some marked refused, some marked exchange. That last appeared more often as we descended. Exchanged, exchange, exchange. Then, near the bottom, one line had been painted instead of scratched. Morrison line remains open. The ladder ended at a round metal door. Not a normal door. It was thick and sealed like something from a submarine or an old bank vault. In the center was a circular window, no wider than my palm, clouded from the inside. Beside the handle, someone had painted the same sentence we had seen in the shaft. The family is the circuit. The voice is the current. The answer is the switch. Under that, in smaller letters, love completes what grief begins. I did not want to touch the handle. For a second, none of us moved. The shaft above us disappeared into darkness. The red bulbs pulsed. Barry climbed down the last few rungs and stood cramped beside us, his face gray with fear. "What now?" he whispered. No one answered. Then there was a knock from the other side of the metal door. One knock, soft, polite, like someone asking permission to enter. Trevor backed into the ladder. Lexi closed her eyes. I knew before the voice spoke. "Little brother," Andrew said, from behind the door. "You made it." My hands went numb. Barry whispered, "That sounds like him." "It is him," I said. I do not know why I said that. Maybe because something in the voice had changed. It did not have the smooth wrongness of the hallway. It did not sound like the hospital wearing Andrew's face. It sounded tired, human, afraid. "Randy," Andrew said, "don't open it because I ask. Open it because you choose to." The handle unlocked by itself. A deep metal clunk rolled through the shaft. Lexi grabbed my sleeve. "Wait." But my hand was already on the door. When I pulled it open, cold air rushed over us, carrying a smell I still cannot describe cleanly. Dust, ozone, old milk, wet concrete, burned wires, and underneath all of it something domestic, laundry soap, baby powder, my mother's perfume. We stepped into the room that should not exist. It was too large. That is the simplest way to say it. There was no possible space for it beneath Blackwood. No architectural logic could explain it. The room stretched farther than our lights could reach, but it was not empty. It was arranged in sections, each one stolen from somewhere else. To our left stood a hospital nursery, with rusted cribs and yellowed name cards. To our right was a living room I recognized from old family photos, the one from my grandparents' house before it was sold. Farther ahead was a laboratory with reel-to-reel machines, sound monitors, cables, and glass booths. Beyond that, impossibly, was the hallway from my elementary school, and at the very center of it all stood a small bedroom with blue walls and glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. My childhood bedroom. The closet door was closed. Dozens of speakers hung from the ceiling at different heights. Some old metal intercom boxes, some plastic baby monitors, some hospital PA horns, some home answering machines nailed to beams. Every one of them was whispering, not words at first. Breathing, crying, humming, praying. People saying names in their sleep. A whole architecture built from voices. Trevor lifted his camera. The cracked screen flickered on. For once, it showed exactly what was in front of us. "Randy," he whispered, "this is still recording." Barry laughed weakly. "Great, evidence, assuming we live long enough to upload it." Lexi moved closer to me. At the center of the laboratory section, behind a wall of thick observation glass, Andrew was sitting in a chair. The real Andrew. I knew it immediately. His head was bowed. His hands were strapped loosely to the arms of the chair with old canvas restraints, though he looked too exhausted to fight them. Wires ran from metal contacts near his temples to a bank of machines behind him. His bare feet rested on a tile floor covered in old chalk markings. But the worst part was his mouth. It was sewn shut by silence. Not thread. Not physical injury. Nothing bloody. Nothing visible except the terrible stillness of his lips. His jaw trembled like he was trying to speak, but all sound came from the speakers above us. "Don't come closer," his voice said. I stepped forward anyway. The observation glass fogged with my breath. Andrew lifted his eyes. They were his eyes. Scared, ashamed, relieved. My throat closed. "You're alive," I said. The speakers crackled. "I'm not sure that word works down here." Behind us, the metal door swung shut. Barry spun around and grabbed the handle. It did not move. "Of course," he said, voice breaking. "Of course the nightmare vault locks from the inside." Lexi ignored him. Her eyes were on Andrew. "What is this place?" The speakers answered, but not in Andrew's voice. Dr. Elizabeth Cray spoke with calm academic precision, as if reading notes into a recorder. "Sub-level response chamber. Trial environment designed test persistent grief resonance across blood-related subjects. Preliminary findings indicate that familial attachment produces measurable acoustic retention in enclosed trauma sites." A reel-to-reel machine turned by itself. The tape had been waiting. Dr. Cray continued. "Patient 237 confirms hypothesis. The dead are not heard because they return. They are heard because love refuses to stop generating them." Trevor whispered, "Jesus." I looked around at the speakers, the nursery, the family living room, the bedroom. "This isn't a haunting," I said. Andrew's eyes met mine through the glass. The speakers answered in his voice. "No, it's a machine that learned how to pray." The words stayed in the room. A machine that learned how to pray. That was the closest anyone ever came to explaining Blackwood. Dr. Cray's recording continued. "Grief behaves as pressure. Repetition behaves as current. A loved name spoken under sufficient emotional distress becomes a conductive event. If repeated response exceeds threshold, the subject may be relocated from biological continuity into acoustic persistence." Barry stared at Trevor. "Translate." Trevor's voice was barely there. "If you answer enough times, it takes you out of your life and turns you into a voice." The speakers hissed. Andrew said, "Not just any voice." The lights above the nursery flickered on. One crib at the far end had a name card still attached. Morrison, infant male A. Beside it, another crib. Morrison, infant male B. I could not move. A and B first, son. Second son, watched me through the glass. "I was A," he said through the speakers. My mother's voice came suddenly from Lexi's pocket, faint but audible. "Randy, leave." I turned toward the phone. "How?" She did not answer. Andrew did. "You don't leave this room by finding a door." The machines behind him warmed with a low electric hum. "You leave by balancing what your family left unfinished." I shook my head. "No, because I understood enough now. Not everything, not the full shape of it, but enough to know that any sentence beginning that way would end with someone being lost." A projector clicked on somewhere behind us. Light struck a stained screen in the laboratory section. Old footage appeared, black and white, grainy, slightly warped. My mother, 16 years old, lay in a hospital bed, pale and terrified. Dr. Cray stood beside her. My grandfather adjusted something on a recording console. 2 infants cried from somewhere off camera. I heard my mother say, "Please don't make me choose." Dr. Cray's voice replied, "You already have. You keep turning toward the second." My grandfather said, "Do what she says, Anna. If this works, we all get someone back." Anna, my mother's name. She turned her head toward the camera, and for 1 second, it felt like she was looking directly at me through time. "I don't want my mother back this way," she whispered. The footage glitched. When it stabilized, one crib was empty. The other held a baby wrapped in a white blanket. My mother was screaming. Dr. Cray's voice remained calm. "Infant A has responded to maternal distress from behind sealed glass. Mark this as call 1. The projector stopped. The room went dark except for the red bulbs and the glow from the machines behind Andrew. I could hear my mother crying through the phone, not trying to explain anymore, just crying. Andrew looked at me. His voice came from a speaker directly above my head. "She carried you out." I pressed my hands against the glass. "I didn't know." "I know. She lied to me." "I know. She lied about you." Andrew closed his eyes. "She lied because the truth still had teeth." For a moment, he sounded exactly like himself, the friend who had sat in my driveway and helped me rewrite my MIT essay. The friend who told me I was better than my fear after Riverside. The friend who had been standing beside me my whole life, while some deeper part of both of us knew we had been separated before we ever met. Then the speakers changed. A new voice entered. Male, older, my grandfather. "Elizabeth, the count is unstable." Dr. Cray answered from another speaker. "It is not unstable. It is incomplete. Anna won't answer again. She will when the child sounds enough like her mother." A baby cried. Then my grandmother's voice began singing. The same song, ships finding their way home by counting stars. My mother screamed, "That isn't her." Dr. Cray said, "No, but it is close enough to open the circuit." Lexi whispered, "They used everyone's grief against everyone else." Andrew's voice came softly. "That's still what it does." The glass in front of him cleared. For the first time, I saw the chalk markings under his chair clearly. A circle. 3 lines crossing it. 3 points labeled Mother. First son, second son. At the center, one word, Answer. The machines hummed louder. One of the counters on the console clicked from 236 to a blank space. Waiting. My mouth went dry. "No," I said. Andrew looked at the counter, then at me. It needs one more. Barry shook his head hard. Nope. No, we are not doing cursed math. Trevor stepped closer to the console, careful not to touch it. If nobody answers, what happens? The speakers gave us Dr. Cray. Failure to complete final response may result in involuntary selection. The system will seek the strongest available attachment. Lexi looked at me, then at the phone in her hand. My mother was still on the line. Her crying had stopped. She had heard. Andrew's voice came quietly. If you don't choose, it chooses Mom. I looked at the glass. What does that mean? It means it takes the oldest open voice first. My mother whispered through the phone, let it. No, I said. Randy, she said. Suddenly calm. I should have gone back a long time ago. I felt something inside me tear, because part of me wanted to hate her. Part of me wanted to throw every lie back into her face and make her carry it. She had hidden Andrew from me. Hidden Blackwood. Hidden the fact that my best friend had been my brother. But she was still my mother, and she sounded very tired. Andrew leaned forward against the restraints. His mouth did not open, but every speaker in the room carried his voice. Little brother, listen to me. It doesn't want sacrifice. It wants recognition. That's the trick. Dr. Cray thought grief powered it, but she was wrong. Grief starts the current. Love completes it. The red bulbs pulsed faster. The counter remained blank, waiting for 2:37. What do I do? I asked. Andrew's eyes filled with tears. You have to decide who I am. The room went silent. Even the whispers stopped. Andrew continued, softer now. If you answer me as a friend, it keeps me as Andrew Callahan. The person you knew. The person your life can survive losing. My chest hurt. If you answer me as your brother, it opens the Morrison line completely. And then he looked past me, toward the childhood bedroom, toward the closed closet door. Then the room chooses a place for one of us. Lexi said, no, there has to be another way. Andrew smiled faintly. That hurt most of all. It was his real smile this time, the tired one. The one he gave when he already knew the bad news and was trying to make it easier for everyone else. There probably was, he said, before they built this room. The closet door in my childhood bedroom clicked once, twice, 3 times. Then it opened a few inches. From inside came the crying boy, not Andrew's grown voice, not the hospital's imitation. A child. I can hear you breathing, he whispered. The machines behind Andrew roared to life. Every speaker in the chamber began repeating my name in different voices. My mother, Andrew. My grandmother, my grandfather, Dr. Cray. The boy in the closet, Randy, Randy, Randy. The counter flickered, 236. Blank, 236, blank. Andrew strained against the chair. Don't let it make the choice for you. The glass between us cracked from top to bottom. My mother's voice came from the phone one last time. Tell him I heard him. Tell him I always heard him. Then the call disconnected. The phone screen went black. The room held its breath. Andrew looked at me through the cracked glass. Not as a ghost, not as bait, not as a theorem, as my brother. And the voice of the child in the closet whispered, Call 237 begins when you say my name. Part 7, the 237th call. Call 237 begins when you say my name. That was what the child in the closet whispered. Not Andrew, not exactly. Not the thing wearing Andrew's voice through the walls either. This was smaller, older, younger. I do not know how else to explain it. The voice sounded like a child and a memory at the same time, like something that had been waiting so long it had forgotten which age belonged to it. The glass in front of Andrew had cracked from top to bottom. Behind it, he sat strapped to the chair with the wires running from his temples to the machines behind him. His mouth remained closed, trembling with the effort of a person trying to speak through a body that no longer owned its voice. Every speaker in that impossible room had gone silent. The nursery, the laboratory, my grandparents' living room, my childhood bedroom, the hallway from my elementary school. All of it waited. The counter on the console flickered between 236 and nothing. Not 237. Not yet. Trevor stood near the recording machines with his broken camera held against his chest. Barry was by the sealed door, still trying the handle every few seconds even though we all knew it would not open. Lexi stood beside me, one hand around my wrist, not pulling me back anymore, just reminding me that I was still there. Alive. Present. Not a voice yet. Andrew looked at me through the cracked glass. His eyes were wet. I think mine were too, but I could barely feel my own face. My mother's phone call had disconnected. The screen was black. Whatever last thing she had wanted to say to me was gone into the same silence that had swallowed every sound inside Blackwood. Tell him I heard him. Tell him I always heard him. That had been her last message. Not to me, to Andrew. The room understood that. I felt it understand. The air changed after she said it, like a machine shifting into a different mode. That was when I finally understood the worst part of Dr. Cray's work. She had not created Blackwood's hunger from nothing. She had measured something that already existed, the oldest human reflex. A voice calls. Someone who loves that voice answers. A mother hears a child crying in another room. A son hears his dead grandmother through a wall. A friend hears his missing friend pleading from the dark. Love moves before reason does. Dr. Cray turned that reflex into a switch. The 237th rule was not a curse in the way people use that word. It was colder than that. It behaved like a law of pressure and current. Grief built up inside a place. Voices repeated. Listeners responded. Each answer made the connection more physical. The first answers made you hear things. Later ones made you see them. After enough responses, the building could take distance, memory, architecture, even family history, and fold them into one room. At 237, something had to cross. A living person into the signal, or a signal into the living world. That was the exchange. That was what Blackwood wanted from us. It had been trying to complete the Morrison line since before I was born. My grandmother Evelyn had died young. My grandfather had brought his grief into Blackwood because Dr. Cray promised him he could hear her again. My mother had been brought in because Cray believed certain families carried grief strongly enough to conduct it. Then Andrew was born, the first son. Infant male A, not dead, not truly alive in the way the rest of us understood it. He was born inside the experiment, inside the listening chamber, while my mother screamed, and my grandfather waited for the voice of his dead wife. Andrew responded to my mother from behind sealed glass. A newborn should not have been able to do that. Dr. Cray marked it as call 1. My mother refused to answer after that. Not fully. Not enough to complete the count. She carried me out later, the second son, the one she could save because the hospital had not attached to me yet. But Andrew was left in the equation. Adopted out under another name. Raised outside Blackwood but never truly free of it. That was why old buildings called to him. That was why he always knew which places felt different. That was why he found Blackwood, not by accident, by resonance. And I had followed him because I was part of the same circuit. The hospital had been aware of me since childhood, because the line between us had never closed. When I was 6, Andrew's trapped signal found me through the safest dark place it could reach. My closet. A child crying behind a door. I can hear you breathing. He had not been trying to hurt me then. I believe that now. He was trying to be heard. My mother stopped me from answering because she understood what I did not. If I had opened that door as a child, Blackwood would have known where to place me. Second son. Available. Loved. Conductive. The closet door in my childhood bedroom creaked wider. Inside it, the darkness seemed small at first, no bigger than any ordinary closet. Then it deepened. Stretched, became a black hallway lined with nursery cribs and school, lockers, and hospital beds. The child whispered again, "Say it." Andrew shook his head violently behind the glass. The speakers crackled, and his voice came through broken and strained. "Don't say brother if you don't mean it." I laughed once, not because anything was funny. Because after everything, Andrew was still trying to protect me from the truth. "I do mean it," I said. The counter flickered. 236. Blank. 236. Blank. Lexi squeezed my wrist. "Randy," she whispered. Think before you answer. I am. But that was not completely true. Thinking had brought me only so far. Thinking had given me the rule, the history, the mechanism, the cruelty of it. But thinking could not tell me what Andrew was. My friend, my missing brother, the first child my mother could not carry out, the boy in my closet. The person who had helped me with my MIT essay, while neither of us understood why we trusted each other so quickly. The hospital waited for a category. Friend or brother, known or hidden, chosen or abandoned, safe loss or open bloodline. That was the trap. Dr. Cray had designed it around recognition, because recognition is one of the few things people cannot fake. You can say a word and not mean it, but Blackwood had been listening to families for decades. It knew the difference between language and love. Andrew looked at me. Through the cracked glass, through the machines, through all the years our mother had placed between us. I thought of every time he had stood at the entrance of an abandoned building and gone in first. Every time he had waited for the rest of us to cross a dangerous floor before he moved. Every time he had noticed I was scared and pretended not to notice, so I would not feel ashamed. He had been protecting me before either of us knew he had a reason. "I'm sorry," I said. The speakers hissed. Andrew's eyes closed. I stepped closer to the glass. "You were my brother before I knew your name." The counter clicked. 237. The sound was small. That surprised me. After all the voices, all the impossible rooms, all the years Blackwood had spent pulling my family back toward itself, the final count was just one little mechanical click. Then every speaker in the chamber turned on at once, not screaming, not roaring, breathing, hundreds of breaths, thousands maybe. Patients, nurses, children, families, all inhaling together as if the room had finally been given lungs. The glass between Andrew and me shattered. It did not explode. It fell inward in slow, glittering pieces that made no sound when they hit the floor. Andrew's restraints loosened. He stood shakily. For 1 second, I thought it had worked. I thought the hospital had accepted the truth and released him. Then the closet door opened all the way. Inside was Blackwood, not the building above us, not the hospital as we had entered it. The real Blackwood, a corridor made from every room where someone had answered when they should not have. A mother's bedroom, a patient cell, a funeral parlor, a basement, a nursery, a car at midnight, a childhood hallway, a kitchen where a phone rang after a burial. All those places stacked behind one small closet door. Andrew looked at it, then at me. "No," I said. He smiled, that real tired smile again. The room chose. I grabbed him. For a moment I had him. His jacket under my hands, his shoulder real beneath my fingers, warm, solid, alive enough to lose. Then the voices began saying my mother's name, Anna, Anna, Anna. Every speaker, every wall, every breath inside the chamber. The hospital had accepted my recognition, but the Morrison line was still open. It had taken the 237th answer and reached for the oldest wound first, my mother. Somewhere outside Blackwood, wherever she was, she must have heard it too. I know because the black phone screen in Lexi's pocket lit up. No signal, no battery. Still it rang. "Mom." Lexi stared at it. "Don't answer," Barry whispered. The phone rang again. "Mom." Again, "Mom." The closet darkened. Andrew's voice came from his own mouth for the first time since we had found him. It was barely audible, raw, human. "Give it to me." I shook my head. "No, Randy, no. If she answers, it takes her. If you answer, it takes you. If no one answers, it chooses from everyone attached to the call." Trevor looked up slowly. "What does that mean?" Andrew looked at all of us. Lexi, Barry, Trevor, me. His face said enough. The hospital did not care about blood only. Blood opened the circuit, but love widened it. Friendship counted too. Witness counted. Anyone who had heard the voice and cared whether it stopped suffering could become usable. That was why it had taken Andrew in the first place. That was why it had called to us in his voice. It was not simply hunting. It was measuring. The phone rang again. "Mom." Andrew reached for it. I tried to stop him, but he was faster, or the room made him faster. He took the phone from Lexi's pocket and looked at the screen. For 1 second, He looked like the Andrew I knew from parking lots and late-night drives and stupid Halloween plans. Then he answered. He did not say hello. He said, "Mom." The room went still. On the other end of the call, my mother made one sound. Not a scream, not a sob, a breath. The kind of breath a person takes when they have found something they lost so long ago they are afraid to touch it. "Andrew," she whispered. The lights went out. I felt the floor move under me, not shaking but shifting, sliding like a stage being reset between scenes. Lexi grabbed my arm. Trevor shouted something. Barry screamed for the door. Andrew's hand found mine in the dark. He squeezed once, then let go. The next thing I remember is morning. Real morning. Cold air, wet leaves, birds. I was lying on my back outside the north fence of Blackwood State Hospital. The sky above me was pale gray. My clothes were soaked through with dew. My throat hurt like I had been screaming for hours. Lexi was beside me. Trevor was on his hands and knees throwing up. Barry sat against a tree, crying into both hands. The hospital stood beyond the fence, silent and dark, its broken windows reflecting the morning like nothing had happened. Andrew was gone. So was the basement window we had used to enter. The gap in the fence was sealed, not repaired, sealed, as if the metal had never been bent. We found our gear near the tree line in a neat pile. 4 backpacks, 4 sleeping bags, 4 flashlights. Andrew's things were not there. Not his backpack. Not his boots. Not his camera. Not even his name in Trevor's footage. That was the second cruelty. The first was losing him. The second was how quickly the world tried to make room for his absence. When we got home, our phones had no pictures of him from that trip. Trevor's recordings were corrupted except for 5 minutes of static, and 1 frame showing the door marked 237. Lexi's photographs of Andrew from the past year developed wrong. In some, he was blurred. In others, he stood half outside the frame, as if the camera had never fully accepted him. Barry found old group chats where Andrew messages were blank. Trevor found his research folder missing every page that mentioned Andrew Callahan. At school, people remembered someone had been friends with us, but they could not agree on his name. My mother remembered. That was how I knew I had not imagined him. When I walked into our kitchen the next day, she was sitting at the table with both hands around a mug she had not drunk from. She looked 20 years older than she had the morning before. I asked her if Andrew was gone. She said, "No, just that. No." Then she said, "He answered me so I wouldn't have to answer him." I hated her then. I loved her too. That is a difficult thing to carry. The fact that someone can hurt you, lie to you, steal an entire brother from your life, and still be the person whose voice you would run toward in a burning house. We never spoke about Blackwood again in any complete way. She gave me a box a week later. Inside were hospital records, adoption papers, 1 bracelet with Andrew's name, and a photograph of her at 16 holding 2 babies. One was turned toward the camera. Me, I think. The other had his face hidden against her shoulder. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, were 2 names. Andrew, Randy. No last names. I left for MIT the next fall. For a while, I convinced myself distance would help. Boston was loud and bright and full of people who believed in clean math, useful physics, and machines that did what they were built to do. I studied aerospace engineering. I learned equations for lift, pressure, resonance, wave propagation. The official world had rules. I liked that. But sometimes, late at night in the lab, when the building settled and the ventilation hummed, I would hear a sound end too quickly, a footstep with no echo, a voice from down the hall that stopped when I listened. I told myself it was stress, sleep deprivation, grief, anything but inheritance. Then, during my second semester, I ran an acoustic resonance test for a class project. The lab was empty. It was 2:37 in the morning, because of course it was. I had not noticed the time until after. The microphone recorded a signal we had not produced. At first, it looked like noise. Then I isolated the pattern. 3 pulses. A pause. 3 pulses. A pause. Over and over. Directional count. I should have deleted it. Instead, I played the audio. For 11 seconds, there was only static. Then Andrew's voice came through the speakers. Very faint, very far away, not pleading, not crying, counting. 1, he said. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. I shut it off before he reached 4. I sat in the dark lab for almost an hour, with my hands shaking over the keyboard. The next morning, there was an email in my inbox from an address I did not recognize. No subject, no sender name, just an attachment, an audio file. I deleted it, then it came back. I deleted it again, it came back again. Finally, I opened it. I am not proud of that. But you have to understand something. When someone you love is trapped somewhere impossible, silence begins to feel like cruelty. The file was 9 seconds long. A child was breathing close to the microphone. Then a small voice whispered, "Dad, don't answer, Uncle Andrew. I do not have children. I am 23 years old as I record this. I have no wife, no son, no daughter. No reason for any future child to know Andrew's name. But last week, while cleaning my apartment, I found a hospital bracelet in the pocket of a winter coat I had not worn since college. Yellowed plastic, faded black letters. Morrison, infant C. No date of birth. Only a number. 237. So if you are listening to this because you like quiet horror stories, because you like old hospitals, missing people, hidden rooms, family secrets, strange recordings, things like that, I need you to understand why I am telling it calmly. It is not because I am calm. It is because I have learned that panic sounds too much like invitation. And if, tonight, while you are almost asleep, you hear someone you love calling from another room, do not answer right away. Count the seconds. Listen to where the voice is coming from. Ask yourself if that room is really in your house. And if the voice says your name like it has been waiting since childhood, close your eyes. Do not speak. Do not whisper back. Do not say you're here. Because somewhere, under a hospital that no longer appears on any county map, my brother is still counting. And sometimes, when the signal is clear, I think he is counting toward me.